Picture this, January 24th, 1961. A farmer in Faro, North Carolina, just happens to look up and sees something straight out of a nightmare. A B-52 Stratofortress, this massive icon of American air power, is literally falling apart, spiraling out of the sky. But what he couldn't see was a whole lot worse, because falling out of that wreckage were two things. Two Mark 39 hydrogen bombs. One of them just slams into a field at over 700 miles an hour. But the other one? It floats down nice and slow on a parachute, and its internal systems are ticking away, arming themselves, sensing the altitude, getting ready to go off. Now, this isn't some Hollywood script. This is the real story of how one single, incredibly cheap electrical switch was the only thing that stood between the east coast of the United States and a self-inflicted disaster of unimaginable proportion.
So, this whole event, which we now know as the Goldsboro incident, it didn't start off as some huge emergency. Nope, it was just a routine flight, one of hundreds just like it. But then, a series of failures sent two thermonuclear weapons tumbling towards American soil. For the people on the ground, can you even imagine? It was just this terrifying sight, a giant bomber ripping itself to pieces, followed by these two silent, deadly shapes falling out of the cloud. To really get what was at stake here, you have to understand what these things were. Each of these Mark 39 bombs was 250 times more powerful than the bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima. And that's not combined, that's each. We're talking about the kind of power that erases cities from the map, falling out of the sky over North Carolina. So you're probably asking, how on earth does a plane carrying weapons that destructive just fall apart over an American state? Well, the answer is rooted in the deep, all-consuming paranoia of the Cold War, and it led to this strategy they called maximum readiness. The official name was Operation Chrome Dome, and the logic at the time seemed simple. If the Soviets ever launched a surprise attack, we had to have our bombers already flying, ready to hit back instantly. It was this constant 24/7 state of high alert. But there's a pretty obvious flaw, right? When you keep these unbelievably complex machines in the air nonstop, eventually something is going to break. And on that January night, the bomber with the call sign Keep 19 was on patrol, just like any other day, carrying its two hydrogen bombs. But then, the crew noticed a huge problem, a major fuel leak, just pouring out of the right wing. The pilot, Major Walter Tulloch, was told to dump fuel and get to the nearest base, and fast. But they were already out of time. The stress on the airframe was just too much. The wing didn't just have a leak, it tore off completely. And in that instant, this massive bomber was thrown into a violent, unstoppable death spiral. The G-forces must have been insane just penning the crew inside. Somehow, in all that chaos, 5 of the 8 crewmen managed to get out. 3, tragically, did not. But as the plane was ripping itself to shreds in the sky, the bomb bay doors were torn open, and the 2 hydrogen bombs were released. And right here, this is where the real nightmares start. You have to remember, we're talking 1961. The safety systems on these things were, well, pretty primitive. There weren't any complex digital locks. These bombs worked on a sequence of physical mechanical switches. And the crazy G-forces from the plane breaking up, it fooled them. As far as the bombs were concerned, all that chaos felt exactly like a pilot deliberately dropping them over an enemy city. So the recovery teams find the first bomb, the one on the parachute, and it's actually in pretty good shape, its nose just buried in a field. But when the explosive ordnance disposal guys, the EOD team, carefully opened it up, their blood must have run cold. They started going through the 4 main safety mechanisms, one by one. They get to the first switch. The force of the plane's disintegration had flipped it. The bomb was one step closer. It was armed. They move on to the second switch. The fact that the parachute deployed correctly, well, that triggered the next step in the arming sequence. So that one was armed too. And then they check the third switch, the one that controls the firing capacitors, and they find the absolute unthinkable. It's armed. The firing signal had actually been sent. The high-voltage battery was charged and ready to go. The bomb was live. There was only one thing left, one final switch. It's a simple little toggle switch in the cockpit that the pilot is supposed to flip. But because the plane fell apart before he ever got the chance, it was still in its default position, safe. That's it. A single, low-voltage toggle switch. A tiny piece of hardware that probably cost less than $1 was the last line of defense preventing a 4-megaton nuclear explosion. Just think about it. If that one switch had short-circuited during the crash, which happens all the time in accidents, North Carolina would have been turned into a radioactive wasteland. But as terrifying as that was, the story wasn't done. Because remember, there was a second bomb, the one they called the Freefall bomb. Its parachute never opened, and it just hammered into a swampy field at supersonic speed, completely disintegrating. For 2 months, the military dug. They found pieces, they found the plutonium trigger, but they never found the thermonuclear secondary. That's the huge uranium core that gives an H-bomb its unbelievable power. It had just plunged too deep into the mud. So eventually, the Air Force just gave up. They bought the land, put a fence around it, and they left it there. To this day, the heart of a hydrogen bomb is still buried under a field in North Carolina. 4 megatons. That was the destructive power of that one bomb. That's 4 million tons of TNT. It's a number so big, it's hard to even wrap your head around. So what would that have actually looked like? If that bomb had gone off, the winds that day would have carried the radioactive fallout straight north, right up the most populated corridor of the entire country. Washington, D.C. would have been blanketed in lethal radiation. Baltimore, Philadelphia, deep in the fallout path. It's even possible it could have reached New York City. We are talking millions of dead, and the very real chance that the rest of the world would assume the Soviets had just attacked us, potentially kicking off World War III. And here's the really scary part. The Goldsboro incident? It wasn't some 1 in a billion fluke. The Pentagon actually has an official code word for accidents like this, for when a nuclear weapon is lost or stolen or accidentally detonated. They call it a broken arrow. It's this clean, sterile term for an absolutely terrifying reality. We have lost control of nuclear weapons a lot more than anybody is comfortable thinking about. Since 1950, the U.S. government has officially admitted to 32 broken arrow incidents. 32 times a situation with a nuke has gone completely off the rails. And of all those incidents, 6 nuclear weapons were lost and have never, ever been found. They are still out there, right now, at the bottom of the ocean, on the side of a mountain, buried in a swamp.
When you get right down to it, the lesson from Goldsboro is a pretty harsh one. We weren't saved by amazing engineering or perfect protocols. We were saved by dumb luck. And when you're playing a game like nuclear roulette, you just can't count on miracles forever. Which brings us to a really tricky question for today. Should we be trying to mount this massive, risky operation to dig up that uranium core that's still under North Carolina? Or is the danger of disturbing it just too great? Is it actually safer to let that sleeping giant lie? Let us know what you think in the comments. We'd love to hear your take.